The Pokemon trading card game, akin to the video games, are divided by generations. With each new generation comes new card design and new rules, but in this video, looking back at the first generation of Pokemon and take a look at the top cards that were used throughout this time. And at number 10, we have Wigglytuff. This colorless type Stage 1 Pokemon has two attacks. The first is Lullaby. For 1 colorless energy, it can put your opponent's active Pokemon to sleep. And for 3 colorless energy, you can use Do the Wave, which does 10 damage plus 10 more damage for each of your bench Pokemon for a normal maximum of 60 damage. Evolved Pokemon typically weren't the standard during this time, as disruption in the form of energy removal and super energy removal meant that powerful attacks such as Stage 2 Charizard's Energy Burn or Machamp's Seismic Toss had a very difficult time getting to their attacks, as both required 4 energy. With Wigglytuff, you had both the advantage of the attack only costing 3 energy for potentially 60 damage, as well as double colorless energy helping you pay for 2 of those 3 energy. At the best of times, you can go first to have Jigglypuff and a single energy attached, and barring energy removal during your opponent's first turn, you could evolve and attach double colorless energy to immediately start attacking your opponent for 60 damage on the second turn. A massive amount of damage for this time in the game's history. Powerful Haymaker staples such as Hitmonchan, Scyther, and Electabuzz all only had 70 hit points as well. So matching Do the Wave with a plus power to further boost the attack by 10 damage meant you were one-hit KOing the strongest Pokemon in the format without worry. Eventually, Wigglytuff became the main attacker in a deck called Trapper, where you would go first and string cards together such as Imposter's Oaks of Revenge, Rocket's Sneak Attack, and the Rocket's Trap to shuffle their entire hand into their deck and use Wigglytuff's Do the Wave in order to end the game as quickly as possible, usually winning by your opponent not having any remaining basic Pokemon. Despite this monster being really good, being an evolution put a damper on it, resulting in the card only receiving the 10th spot on this list. And at number 9, we have Dark Vileplume. This is a Stage 2 Grass-type Pokemon that has 1 Pokemon power and 1 attack. The power Hay Fever has the effect that neither player can activate trainer cards, but this power stops working while Dark Vileplume is asleep, confused, or paralyzed. Petal Whirlwind for 3 grass energy can let you flip 3 coins, and then do 30 damage times the number of heads. However, if you hit 2 or more heads, Dark Vileplume became confused. Despite being a Stage 2 with less HP than Wigglytuff, Dark Vileplume's interaction was never to attack. Instead, it's to sit on the bench and prevent your opponent from using trainer cards as soon as possible after you've already set up your attackers. Usually, these are in the form of Jungle Snorlax, who had the Body Slam attack for 30 damage for 4 colorless energy, with the ability to paralyze your opponent's active Pokemon if you landed a heads on the coin flip. Paralyze in Pokemon TCG usually indicates by turning a Pokemon 90 degrees clockwise, makes it so the Pokemon affected cannot attack or retreat for 1 turn after becoming paralyzed. Then at the end of the turn, they return to normal. The other attack, Dark Golduck, is a Stage 1 Pokemon that can do 50 damage with 2 Psychic and 1 colorless energy. Dark Golduck was usually paired with Dark Vileplume thanks to its pre-evolution, Fossil Psyduck, who for a Psychic energy can attack with Headache, making it so your opponent can't play trainer cards during their turn, effectively locking them out before they can play the game. As during the time these cards were standard format legal, you could attack on your first turn. The way this was done most of the time was by using an energy attachment on an active Psyduck, then benching an Oddish for the next turn. Then, after the turn of your opponent activating trainer cards passes, you can use Pokemon Breeder, a card that allows you to put Stage 2 evolution straight onto a basic Pokemon without needing to go into a Stage 1, bypassing Dark Gloom and setting up the lock 1 turn quicker. This made for a nearly unbeatable lock, if not for a single card introduced in Fossil, Muck. This card has the Pokemon power Toxic Gas, which says to ignore all Pokemon powers other than toxic gases, but this power stops working if Muck is asleep, confused, or paralyzed. As good as this counter was, Dark Vileplume could easily use cards like Rocket's Sneak Attack to ensure your opponent never had a chance to set up Grimer for Muck to get on the field. So the only real way of getting past your opponent's powerful ability was to go first. And at number 8, we have Computer Search. This trainer card has the effect that you can discard 2 cards to search for any card from your deck and put it into your hand. This extremely versatile searcher was played at maximum copies in just about every deck imaginable. And since you could search any card, you don't have to reveal that added card to your opponent. This ruling even remains today with standard format relevant cards such as Arceus V-Star, who can use the ability Starbirth to search any 2 cards from your deck and put them into your hand, but only once per game as the V-Star power rule prevents you from using more. With this card's versatility, it was useful in any situation you could find yourself in during any format in which it was legal. Need to remove energy from a powerful Pokemon on your opponent's side of the field? Simply search for super energy removal to wipe 2 energy off of it at the cost of discarding 1 of your own attached energy cards. Need to bring one of your opponent's bench Pokemon back up to the active due to it being close to a KO? Search for Gust of Wind to bring it back into the active and knock it out for a prize card. Need to find multiple cards but don't have any resources? Use Computer Search to grab Professor Oak and get a brand new hand of 7 cards. This card was so powerful that when A-Spec card items were introduced during Gen 5's Black and White era, Computer Search was printed as 1, only allowing you to play 1 copy of your deck, and locking you out from using any other powerful A-Spec cards like Dowsing Machine, which allowed you to discard 2 cards to add a trainer card back from your discard pile, a Life Dew, which reduced the prize payout to KO by 1 prize, or Scoop Up Cyclone, allowing for a player to put 1 Pokemon and all cards attached to it back into their hand. Computer Search was versatile, but it only facilitated powerful plays rather than being the reason the plays existed, hence why it's lower in the countdown. And at number 7, we have Rocket's Sneak Attack and Rocket's Trap. The former allows you to look at your opponent's hand, and if they have any trainer cards, choose one of them and shuffle it back into your opponent's deck. Whereas the latter has you flip a coin, and if heads, shuffle 3 random cards from your opponent's hand back into their deck. Now, it's nearly impossible to talk about these 2 cards separately, as they're usually shown up together in the same hand control strategies. While Rocket's Sneak Attack was introduced in the Team Rocket expansion, it was played individually as a way to gain hand knowledge of your opponent's hand in order to make the most optimal bench plays, while also letting you know where to expend resources such as energy removal and plus power. Once the Rocket's Trap was introduced in the next set, Gym Heroes, it facilitated a full hand loop, or reducing your opponent's hand down to 0 cards, with the help of a card called Imposter's Oak's Revenge, which has the effect to discard a card, then shuffle your opponent's hand into their deck and have them draw 4 cards. The combo starts by exhausting your copies of Erica, a card that would let you draw up to 3 cards, then allow your opponent to draw up to 3 cards as well. Then use Imposter's Oak's Revenge to shuffle all your opponent's now large hand back into the deck. From there, Rocket's Sneak Attack would bring them down to 3, assuming they have a trainer card. Then resolving a single Rocket's Trap would put them down to 0. Computer Search and Item Finder also help to ensure that if you hit tails on a few Rocket Traps, you'd be able to get those last 3 cards out of your opponent's hand in due time. While most players would just use Wigglytuff to do the wave attack to end the game early, some players use Jungle Mankey and Peek ability to look at the top card of your deck to ensure they wouldn't draw a card like Bill or Professor Oak to recover the resources. And at number 6, we have Jungle Lickitung. This basic colorless type Pokemon has 2 attacks. The first, Tongue Whip, for 1 colorless energy, does 10 damage and flips a coin. If heads, your opponent's Pokemon is not paralyzed. While the second, Supersonic, has you flip a coin, and if heads, your opponent's Pokemon is confused. Confusion nowadays isn't super special, as it only makes the Pokemon hit itself for 30 damage if, on attack declaration, you flip tails. But during the time Lickitung was standard format legal, Confusion had a slightly different effect. Instead of doing 30 damage, it only did 20, but it also affected retreating. The Pokemon that was attempting to retreat would first have to discard the required energy, then flip a coin to see if the retreat was successful. If heads, you can retreat as normal, and if tails, the retreat fails and your energy is discarded. This made Lickitung a very strong option for stall players looking to deck out their opponents, as Paralysis could stop attacks and Confusion could stop retreating in attacks, as many players weren't playing Switch during the time to evade Lickitung's deadly lock. The only downside to Lickitung during this time was a fighting weakness, as base set Hitmonchan was seen a lot in the Haymaker strategy, doing 20 damage for 1 fighting energy, doubled to 40 thanks to weakness. However, during the same set Lickitung was introduced, Scyther was also added to the card pool, giving Lickitung the perfect partner to counter fighting type Pokemon thanks to a minus 30 resistance. Matched with cards like Pokemon Center, which heals all Pokemon on your side of the field completely, but discarding all energy, and Scoop Up, allowing you to choose one of your Pokemon in play and return the basic Pokemon to the hand, discarding the rest, they made Lickitung a powerful choice to build a deck around. And at number 5, we have a 3-way tie between base set Hitmonchan, Electabuzz, and Jungle Scyther. This trio Pokemon make up the center of the Haymaker strategy, and are rather difficult to separate as they all serve the same purpose for different typings. Hitmonchan is a basic fighting type Pokemon with 2 simple attacks. Jab requires 1 fighting energy for 20 damage, and Special Punch does 40 damage with 2 fighting energy and 1 colorless. Electabuzz is a basic lightning type Pokemon also with 2 attacks. Thundershock requires 1 lightning energy for 10 damage, then flips a coin if heads, paralyzes your opponent's active Pokemon. Then for 1 lightning and 1 colorless, Thunder Punch does 30, then flips a coin. If heads, does 10 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. If tails, do 10 damage to Electabuzz. Then finally, Scyther is a basic grass type Pokemon, once again with 2 attacks. The first, Swords Dance, takes 1 grass energy and doubles Scyther's slash attack base damage to 60 rather than 30. Then for 3 colorless energy, slash normally does 30 damage. All of these Pokemon have some really similar features in that they all have 70 HP and are basic, making them rather easy to fit together. With energy removal and super energy removal being such powerful cards during the time these Pokemon were standard legal, you needed a way to be able to attack over and over again without losing attack or energy attachment tempo, both of which were helped by the requirement of only 1 energy, while Scyther was the pivot Pokemon. Upon KO, players would choose Scyther due to the 0 energy retreat cost, allowing them to assess the board on their turn, then decide whether or not to retreat into either Hitmonchan or Electabuzz depending on the situation. Hitmonchan hit Pokemon like Lickitung and Wigglytuff for weakness, while Electabuzz hit one of the other popular decks of the time for weakness, Rain Dance Blastoise. Blastoise was the only Stage 2 Pokemon at the time that was sort of protected from energy removal, as the namesake Pokemon Power allowed for the player to attach a water energy to any water-type Pokemon as many times as you like per turn. This trio countered just about everything in the base set, jungle, and fossil metagames, though one card that came out as a promo went above and beyond as a haymaker. And at number 4, we have the Wizards of the Coast promo, Mewtwo. This promo, handed out to attendees of the Pokemon the First movie in late 1999, is a basic Psychic-type Pokemon with 2 attacks. The first, Energy Absorption, for 1 Psychic Energy allows you to attach 2 energy cards from your discard pile to Mewtwo, and for 2 Psychic 1 colorless, you can use Psyburn for 40 damage. While very similar to Electabuzz and Hitmonchan, Mewtwo was a very strong Pokemon that could also somewhat counteract energy removal by simply attaching more from the discard pile, getting back those that were either discarded off of cards like Professor Oak, Computer Search, or Item Finder, or the first turn to be much more aggressive with your resources, or from your opponent's energy removal or super energy removal to recoup the losses. It also hit for weakness on both itself and Hitmonchan, while also being able to 2-hit KO both Scyther and Electabuzz, something most decks outside of Wigglytuff couldn't do before the release of this movie promo. Speaking of which, Mewtwo also paired nicely with Wigglytuff to cover the fighting weakness the deck had, helping to force Haymakers out of the base set through fossil metagame before the massive power creep that Team Rocket, Gym Heroes, and Gym Challenge provided. And at number 3, we have Bill. This is a trainer card that allows you to draw 2 cards. Bill is simply a consistency piece that helps any deck reach their win condition. All decks in the Pokemon TCG must be 60 cards, and digging for resources like energy, basic Pokemon, evolved Pokemon, and utility cards is just key to winning a game. Playing Bill at 4 copies essentially makes any Pokemon TCG deck a 56 card deck, increasing consistency as Bill can usually always be activated except while under a trainer card lock. In other card games, getting what's known as a +1 in hand advantage, as you replace Bill with 1 card, then add another card by drawing it, usually gives you more resources to outmaneuver your opponent. Usually in Magic the Gathering, this is known as an instant, being able to counter an opponent's card during their turn with your own. And in Yu-Gi-Oh!, there are quick effects that can be activated on monsters, spells, and traps and negate effects or activations of cards. But with Pokemon, there isn't much utility outside of deck thinning, but that's good enough to make Bill a staple in just about every deck during the time in which it was standard legal. And at number 2, we have Professor Oak. This is a trainer card that allows you to discard your hand, then draw 7 cards. A very simple card with a powerful effect. Professor Oak was one of the 3 cards you'd see in every single deck, as it made any deck more consistent by just giving them access to more resources. While early in the game's history during base set, jungle, and fossil, discard resources to occur new ones tended to be hyper aggressive and too risky, as deck out was a common occurrence. Once the movie promo Mewtwo came out and synergies with the discard pile emerged, Professor Oak became even heavier of an include, getting close to being at 3 copies in every deck. At the end of Generation 1, Professor Oak saw play in the previously mentioned Trapper deck, helping to turbo through your deck and find exactly Imposter's Oak's Revenge, Rocket's Sneak Attack, and the Rocket's Trap, and the basic Pokemon energy needed to fill your attacks to end the game once your hand loop had been achieved. Despite discarding your whole hand sounding costly, 3 other cards help to recycle discarded resources if needed. In base set, Item Finder allows you to discard 2 cards and add a trainer card from your discard pile to your hand, so you can potentially reuse powerful staples like Professor Oak with a dead hand, Bill to draw extra cards, or energy removal to put your opponent back on attachment tempo. Also in this same set, Energy Retrieval allows a player to discard 1 card, then add 2 basic energy cards in the discard pile to their hand. While this prevents recycling of double colorless energy, it does give access to any type you want, whether it be Water and Rain Dance Blastoise, Psychic with Mewtwo-centric decks, or Fighting and Lightning for Haymaker strategies. Lastly, introducing Team Rocket was Nightly Garbage Run, a card that would let you choose 3 basic Pokemon, Evolved Pokemon, or basic energy cards, and shuffle them back into your deck for later use. While the resources would end up in your deck, there were always copies of Computer Search or Item Finder for cards that would dig deeper into the deck to find them. This card was so powerful that nowadays it's found on the supporter card Professor's Research with the same text, but supporter cards can only be used once per turn, nor can you normally use any of the supporters the turn you activate one. But this card's spiritual successor still lives on in the modern game, one of the many reasons it's only number 2 on this list, as number 1 was so strong that it has never been printed again. And at number 1, we have both Energy Removal and Super Energy Removal. Both are trainer cards, with the first allowing you to choose 1 energy card attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon and discard it with no cost to you, while Super Energy Removal allows you to discard 2 energy cards, but the cost of discarding 1 energy card attached to one of your Pokemon. These 2 cards worked in tandem to ensure all Pokemon that needed 3 energy cards to attack would never have the chance to do so, outside of Wigglytuff being able to use double colorless to pay for 2 of the 3 energy costs, and Mewtwo who could recoup the costs by attaching from the discard pile. Ever since these cards rotated out of standard format in 2001, they've never been considered to be printed again in their original forms. Many retrains have included needed variances and nerfs, such as Energy Removal 2 and Crushing Hammer. Both of these cards require a coin flip to perform energy removal, while the situationally useful Lost Remover and Enhanced Hammer remove 1 special energy from an opponent's Pokemon, and puts it in either the Lost Zone or discard pile respectively. Guaranteed removal of energy from your opponent's Pokemon tends to be a no-no in Pokemon TCG card design nowadays though, as the only one currently standard format legal as of October 2022 is Crushing Hammer, and the card rotates at the beginning of 2023. While very irritating to play against, both energy removal cards warp the Generation 1 format to be very skill-based, as these cards ensure that players needed to preserve their energy, considering cards like energy retrieval to get them back, or to not discard them with computer search or item finder. But the key word is warp, as these format warping cards did more to the game than anything else on this list, allowing it to take the #1 spot. Alright, and that's the list. If you know of any other good cards I may have missed or have ideas for future videos just like this one, I'd love to hear about them down in the comments below.